Welcome back to another episode of the Persistence Project, where we talk all things strength training from mindset to max effort. I'm your host, Robert Allen. I'm a strength coach and a multiplier powerlifter. And this podcast is all about talking to other athletes, coaches and practitioners within the strength space about how they do what they do and why they do what they do. As always, this podcast is brought to you by my awesome sponsors, Jacked and Juiced Apparel, who are running a special Movember t-shirt for the charity at the moment. So go to their Instagram and check that out. You can order it through the DMs. East Coast Supplements in Dubbo and Hunter Performance Physiotherapy here in the Hunter. Today, my guest is a little outside the strength world, but still going to provide a lot of value. It's former NRL player Chris Houston. Chris is a 10-year veteran of the NRL, playing for St George Illawarra and the Newcastle Knights. He spent 3 years in England playing in the Super League with the Widnes Vikings. I had to look up how to say that. And now he is the CEO of In Minds Training, which is a mental health support organisation that does a lot of physical and mental health awareness and education in the workplace. So, Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Rob. Really appreciate you having me on, and keen to share some things, but find out a bit of your journey along the way as well.
Oh, yeah. So, like we were saying off air, this is the first time we've actually met, but I've heard about you for many years because you went to high school with my wife, which is a nice little serendipitous meeting of, 6 degrees of separation type thing. Yeah. So I look forward to this conversation, and thank you very much for coming on. Yeah. And where I normally start these is how you got into the gym, but with you being a professional athlete, what I want to get into is how, when you first got in, you would have started playing rugby as a little fella, but when was the first time you realised that this was something you could take further, and when did you kind of start to make that shift into, I'm going to do this professionally?
Yeah, so I grew up in Narooma down the far south coast, about 4 hours south of Sydney, and I had a great childhood as a kid. Mum was a school teacher and Dad was a plumber, and I had an older brother as a great role model there. But I started my journey in sport probably at the beach, doing a bit of nippers, surfing and playing soccer till I was about 10 years old. And a great family friend was really in rugby league and convinced me to come over and have a game. And I remember as a young guy just starting to play rugby league and really enjoyed it, enjoyed a bit of the contact around it, but just the competitive nature of it. And, just stuck with it. And I think maybe, about 15, 16, we had a few really tough years where we were probably the form side most of the year, but we lost 3 grand finals in a row to the same team. And that, drove a bit of I suppose, determination in me to keep wanting to get better and to finally try and beat them. Mm-hmm. And I remember I was 16 and we had a scout come down to Narooma to watch footy then. League fans may know who he is, Peter O'Sullivan. He's actually just come on board at the Knights, at Newcastle Knights, to help them develop their programs and get some players in there. He scouted me and wanted me to move to Brisbane at the time. And that's where Melbourne Storm's feeder club was out of. But at that time, I was just about to start year 12 in high school. And Mum and Dad were really positive and encouraging about my football career, but thankfully they were very strong in terms of wanting me to finish year 12 and graduate from high school before I made any changes. So probably at about that age 15, 16, I was at the crossroads thinking, is football even a possibility as a career, or is it just fun? And then I was lucky enough where somebody showed a bit of interest in me, and I thought, wow, maybe there is an opportunity or a career path that can come on the back of this, because, down the South Coast, and this was very early 2000s, you feel like you're a million years away from Sydney and these NRL clubs. So you feel like you don't really even exist down there. So for somebody to travel down and notice you is a pretty big thing.
Mm. There's just one thing about the far South Coast that's different to the South Coast. There's a lot of people talk about the South Coast, but the far South Coast is far for a reason. It's a long way from everything.
It is, but that's what keeps it nice and quiet down there as well.
That's it. Yeah. So that would have been a pretty exciting time, being in the Narooma, was it the Devils?
Yeah.
Being in that little club and being, headhunted by scouts as a potential NRL possibility, that would have been pretty exciting.
Yeah, it was. And look, the local club, the Devils, at that time, through their juniors and the first grade team, were going really well. They had a really successful team. And as a young guy, just 13, 14, 15, all I really wanted to do was play first grade for my local club, for the Devils. My brother, being a few years older, had started playing a bit of first grade, and him and a few other guys, they were definitely my role models for sure. But then to know that there other opportunities around that, and to potentially go and start training with a professional club was pretty exciting. And so grateful, I suppose, for both the parents. But like the way it turned out was, I ended up signing a scholarship with the Illawarra Steelers. I didn't move to Brisbane with the Storm Feeder Club, but they transferred my name to the Steelers, which was the Dragons Juniors. So in Year 12, instead of doing school sport on a Wednesday, the school allowed me to have the afternoon off, and Dad, being a plumber, he's his own boss, he could finish work a bit earlier. And we'd jump in the car and we'd drive 3 hours from Narooma up to Wollongong. I'd train for 2 or 3 hours there, do a mix of weights, skills, ball work, etc. And then Dad would drive me back, and then I'd go back to school Thursday, he'd go back to work, and then Friday afternoon, Mum, Dad, sometimes my brother and sometimes my nan, we'd all jump in the car back up to Wollongong and or Sydney and play on the weekend. So for the first year that I'd actually dipped my toe in professional, although it was only juniors, I was still actually living in Narooma, and the family was making massive sacrifices to give me that start.
Yeah. It seems to be a common thing. If you're going to make it to that level, you certainly don't do it on your own. Even though it's you doing it, you've got a team behind you, and at that age it's got to be your family.
It is, and I suppose some young talented kids or looking for different opportunities from the country, they might go year 11 and 12 at boarding schools, in Sydney or etc. to follow that path. But I was lucky enough, I got to stay at home but still got to experience that.
Yeah. My nephew actually was on track to being scouted by the AFL.
Yep.
And he was doing a similar thing, but my sister and her husband were doing a lot of, they still do now, because he plays, I don't know at what level, but it's professional level under VFL.
Yeah.
And they still travel to watch him play every weekend, and there's so much sacrifice that goes into it from a family level that, it's good that you can be pushed in that direction supportively like that when you've got a team behind you. So you're playing in the juniors, and then you did your first year in the NRL with St. George.
Yeah.
Or St. George Illawarra, I should say, not leave out Illawarra. What was that like?
Yeah, great. Yeah, so from that first year, training up there and playing the first season, as soon as I finished Year 12, I then moved to Wollongong. And probably for about 3 or 4 years there, you just go from playing sort of under 18s, which was Jersey Flag, to under 20s, to reserve grade, and then first grade. So, just like you do an apprenticeship in your day-to-day work, you've got to do your football apprenticeship and come through those grades. And through that time, I was going to university as well, and we'll touch on that later, I guess. But doing some study outside and training morning and afternoons or nights, 5 or 6 days a week. And eventually, persistence, hard work, all that stuff comes into it. But then in 2007, as a 21-year-old, I debuted first grade for the Dragons, and it was, unbelievable. Yeah, just something that you just dream of doing. I'd put all the eggs in that basket, so to speak, although I was studying. That was without a doubt my main focus. And then to achieve that goal, but then to stay in the team and play some regular football, it was a dream come true. Yeah.
And so that first year at the professional level or the top level, how many games did you play?
I ended up playing 16 that year out of about 24.
Yeah.
I think I came in maybe in about round 4, so I missed the first few games, but then came in and basically played the rest of the season, maybe bar one.
Yep.
Very lucky at the time. We had a really good squad, to be fair. A few changes were happening in the place, but a lot of the senior players were probably backing me to be in the team, which was really good. having the support of your teammates as well as the coaching staff, without a doubt. But a lot of those were pushing to bring me in, which I valued and appreciated a lot, and I didn't want to let them down. That was a big thing.
Mm. So in all up, that process took about, 6 years?
Yeah.
15 to 21?
Yeah,
really?
Without a doubt, yeah. Yep.
So a lot of time and hard work to finally get there. Did the reality match the dream?
It did. But you're right. It's hard work. It is sacrifice. Like, a lot of people, may not see the lengths you go to. They see you play and then out maybe having a beer after the weekend, and it all looks pretty happy and rosy.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of challenges between that. And look, I remember, I think we were maybe 19 at the time, and they broke our squad into possibles and probables. And I was in the possibles, so still probably not even in the top 13 or 14 in our big squad. And then they said, look, out of your whole age group, 2 or 3 people will go on to play first grade.
Right.
And we already had 2 or 3 from our age group that were in that full-time squad. And people may know, like Ben Cray, Ashton Sims, and Justin Paul were 3 guys. So, when you hear that, you've probably got 2 choices to make. Am I going to challenge that and go after that, or are the cards already dealt, so to speak? But I had this little bit of drive in me that, just keep it consistent and see what happens.
Well, it's a big thing too, because that's the reality of that. Seems like the cards are stacked against you. It's like, well, this is kind of, if you were possibly less driven, you'd be like, well, what's the point? I'm going to be one of 20.
Yeah.
And, or one of 3 in a squad of 20. It seems like it's just not going to happen. What did that drive look like to you? Like, you obviously said you're consistent and persistent, and there was a drive there, but what did you actually do to be like, the variables that you can control to make sure you did as well as you could? Yeah,
well, look, I think as well, there's probably a lot of deep stuff to unpack there a little bit, but I was always grateful to be in even the position I was in already. Mm-hmm. So even that felt like a really good stepping stone. Yeah. So it wasn't like I was just happy and content with where I was. I wanted that, but I wanted more. And then, the consistency piece was key, because, like, over even just training throughout the year, games, people are starting to get other jobs and apprenticeship. You can slowly start to see people sort of falling off around you, and you think, I'm that little bit closer. Yeah. And just, again, having coaching staff that believes in you, listening to feedback, trying to grow day to day is key. But looking back on it now, it's probably a few family values around, that hard work, consistency, etc., that I would have been doing if I was doing a plumbing apprenticeship or doing a different job. It's just how I like to go about my work. Yeah. And so obviously your folks would have been a big inspiration there. If your dad was self-employed and your mum was a teacher, they were obviously hard workers. Yeah. Yep. Whether they, wanted to be or not, they're both hard jobs. So, but they obviously instilled some sort of work ethic in you that drove you to push further and to have that support behind you too. Yeah, without a doubt. And even, like, sometimes I have a laugh and think about my brother. Like, he was doing his plumbing apprenticeship with Dad. Mm-hmm. So you can't ring up and have a sick day when you're living in the next bedroom, can you? So, you put your boots on, whether they're work boots or footy boots, and away you go. But we had a little bit of a family motto, hard, fast and enthusiastic, and that's how we like to approach our work, no matter what trade you're in. Yeah, that's a good motto. I like that one. Yeah. So you got there, and how different was it to what you were doing previous? Like when you were with the Devils and you started getting scouted and you're going up and you're doing weight training and on-field training and, developing your skills and your strength and all that. Once you got to the squad before you're in the NRL, what did the training look like? Yeah, it was so different. Like, before I'd sort of stepped into that space, I was basically just doing a little bit of cardio stuff and just football training with the ball in hand. And then as soon as I got into that professional level, all of a sudden the nutrition tips come, the weight programs come. Yeah. and not just what you should be doing. Here's what you're currently benching or squatting, and here's what the elite in your age group is doing. And there was 300 or 400% gap, and I was like, I've got a thin frame anyway, and anyone who's seen my career probably knows I'm more endurance based than strength. So I had a lot of work to do in that area. But yeah, look, that's one thing. Even now that I've retired from football, I try and still use just a lot of those foundations and how important that is to be doing some sort of resistance to keep your body right and keep your mind right. And that's one thing as an athlete in a professional program, you gain so much self-awareness and you're so in tune with your body because there's people around you that are experts in the space constantly drip feeding you information. Yeah.
So the powerlifter in me wants to know where you started with the squat and the bench and where did you get to?
Well, I honestly, I would have been like benching probably 40 kilos, I reckon, even if that.
Yeah.
Probably even at my strongest, I was only maybe a little bit over 100, 110 or 15 maybe for 3 reps. I got a pretty bad shoulder injury when I was about 20 years old and lost some nerve damage and stuff like that, which you just learn to play with.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was other guy. I remember when we were in under 20s, we had one of the guys in our team, an Islander boy, Charlie Liano, and he benched a couple of reps on about 180 kilos.
Yeah.
So, even in the same position, a massive difference in strength. But obviously I was trying to knock out as many minutes as I could on the field, and he was just coming on impact and causing chaos.
So the shoulder injury, you at 20, that was before you went into St. George in the full squad?
Yeah, it was, So in the under-20s season, we were having a really great year, and I got the opportunity to step up and play a few games in reserve grade. And in one of those games, I just I had the ball and got tackled, and somebody landed on my back, and my shoulder popped out through the front, and I dislocated my shoulder. I had to get a reconstruction. Which is like there'd be a lot of football players that would have one of them some point in their career, but with mine, unfortunately, I got nerve damage where the axillary nerve stretched. It's called axillary nerve palsy, and basically when I started doing my rehab, I was getting no signal down to my delt to move my shoulder in certain ways. So over a couple of months, 2-3 months, all of that muscle just shrunk into nothing. I had an operation on it where they tried to make the passage a bit wider, hoping the nerve would regenerate a bit, but it just never did. So it was weird. I used to wear this seatbelt strap that ties onto your opposite groin and goes across, so it would limit your range and movement.
Yep.
And just learnt to play with it. But I've got no doubt probably the medical staff at the Dragons at the time and the coaches were probably thinking, is this an injury that's going to prevent him from playing first grade? And without a doubt, like if I was the coach, I'd be probably thinking the same thing. But again, I ended up getting back to football that year and probably adapted my tackling style a little bit, but it held up, and it's just amazing how your body adapts.
Oh, yeah.
Like
how did that affect the mindset going in there?
Yeah.
That would have been a big, it could have been a big setback.
Yeah, it was for sure, without a doubt. There was a lot of self-doubt there, without a doubt, and a lot of pain, even still now, just discomfort there. But it's just something, over time that I think you learn to live with, the pain or this discomfort side of it. But, I remember, even just the confidence in the gym, like push and pull was a bit weaker, but definitely anything above head, I'd lost a lot of strength there and not much stability. And then constant physio, I suppose, and maintenance. And that's another thing that's so great when you're in those professional programs, is not just the information on how to look after yourself, but actually the physio, the treatment, and how well people help you.
Yeah, it's almost like you don't get a chance to screw it up, because there's a team of people who are like, you can't screw it up. We've got to fix it.
Exactly.
Like their primary goal is obviously your health,
to get you on the field.
But your health, so like it helps you too, because to get healthy enough to play footy. It's to get healthy enough to function daily, really. So that's probably a good thing. Whereas, you see people, particularly in my world in powerlifting, that have injuries, and we have access to physios and stuff, but we don't have teams. Yep. So it's an individual sport where we pay for everything ourselves. So a lot of people will get that sort of injury that's catastrophic to them, and they can't see their way out of it because they don't. They might have a coach who's just like doesn't know what to do to rehab it, and you can't spend thousands of dollars on physio, and there you go, I'll give up my dream of doing the sport. So I guess that's a bonus of the professional sport.
It is. And look, I'm in exactly that situation now, just with my body, like I still like to exercise, and you get a little niggle or a twinge in your neck, and like 10 years ago, I'd be straight on the physio bed, or you'd be seeing a masseuse, etc. Now you're just like, I'm begging the wife to give it a massage or getting out the roller because, it's time, effort, energy, and everything. A lot of things come down to cost, and you think, am I going to go and drop $100 on that, or how many treatments do I need, etc. So we were blessed. I just strained my pec last week, and then it came good, and I strained it again like 6 days later, which was silly on my part. I should know better, but I went and saw the physio, and he released it. He's like, I want you to do this. I want you to come back in 10 days. And in between, if you could get a massage, that was great. And I was just like, I don't think I can afford to come back in 10 days, let alone get a massage in between, but I'll do my best. I know. It's like the cost of living, I'd not probably go down that track, but it is everything. Just it's out of pocket. It adds up. And I actually heard something the other day. Somebody was saying that LeBron James, I think, spends $1 million a year on his body.
Yep.
When you're getting paid a lot more than that, you can do that. But that's the lengths, that these professional athletes are going to these days to stay right at their peak, and it's needed.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's something I talk about with newer lifters who want to compete and compete at a decent level, is that there's a certain amount of upkeep you have to do. If you're going to, like, even if it's a low-level sport, you're still trying to perform like an athlete. So you need to treat yourself like an athlete. You need to be on it with your food. And in powerlifting, if you're trying to stay at a certain weight, then you have to be pretty smart with your food. But if you're just trying to be as big as possible and as strong as possible, you just need to eat. Yeah. But so many people just don't eat. That's a simple one. Eat and sleep. You'll be good. Yeah. But that constant upkeep is really important, and trying to get people to understand that when they haven't come from a sporting background. Like even myself, I didn't play sport as a youngster that much, certainly not from 15 onwards. And the upkeep is like something I've had to learn. Yeah. It's like, my body's trying to perform at an elite level, but you're treating it like a paddock bomb. So
the nutrition and the rest for recovery is important, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. So how did that look for you? Because you were studying at the same time as you were coming up through the reserve grade into the pros. Yeah. How was your time management with all that? Like, did you have someone handling it, or did you have to handle that yourself?
No, you're in the deep end, without a doubt. So I was not quite 18. I was 17 when I first moved up to Wollongong, and with not much base of nutritional knowledge behind me, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But we were my basic day back then, and through that first 5 years is I'd get up and just try and eat anything, whether it was even just cereal or toast or whatever. We'd go and do some weights training in the morning, and I'd either drive or be on the push bike down to Widnes Stadium, and then from there I'd then go to uni. I'd be at uni for most of the day, and then our field and fitness work would be in the afternoon. So once you got to training in the afternoon, not in the early years, but as you're getting closer to reserve grade and then first grade, they would give you some supplements. But it was up to you to still get some sort of food in before that. And then part of my scholarship at that time, or my early contracts, was I actually got fed 4 nights a week at the Steelers Club, because there was a lot of us country kids moving out from home. So they'd give us, $15 or something a night at those to spend on a meal there. So at least we could have a steak and a bit of veg, and away we go. Yeah. And that was just rinse and repeat until the weekend, but like for years. Yeah. Yeah, right.
Well, I look back at some old photos of you when you were playing at the Knights, at least, and you were quite the unit then. You would have been a skinny boy when you come up from Narooma. How long did it take to put that amount of mass on.
Yeah. I think before I did my shoulder, so I reckon 4 years probably, 3 to 4 years of pretty consistent training.
Mm-hmm.
I reckon I was maybe about 105 kilos then, roughly, and I'd start the season then, and then throughout the season, just with the demands of playing every week, I'd find myself losing a bit of weight throughout the year.
Mm-hmm.
The heaviest I got was 108 kilos one year up here at the Knights.
Yeah.
But yeah, just trying to maintain that throughout the year is tough.
Yeah, well when your expenditure of energy is so high, playing games every week and training, the amount of energy you have to then put back in is significant. And, add rest and study and whatever else you're doing on top of that, gets to be a lot.
Yeah.
So when you spent a year at the Dragons and then came up to the Knights, how did that come about and what did that look like for you?
Yeah, so after that first year, playing first grade there at the Dragons, the Knights came down and I had a meeting in Bulli with two representatives from the Knights organisation, and they said they're interested in me going up there for a few years if I was open to that opportunity. And I had a chat to the Bulldogs at the time as well, and they were a club doing some really good things around that time. But I also was thinking about staying at the Dragons, but at that time, again, two guys similar age to me and great mates of mine, Bo Scott and Benny Cray, they were not only playing regular first grade, but starting to play a little bit of Origin. Mm-hmm. So if I stayed there, I would have been competing with them for a starting spot or a bench spot or move around a bit in the forward pack, which I still would have loved to have done that as well. But I then started thinking about a bit of a change, and I looked up at Newcastle. I started looking at their squad and roster, and I had a manager at the time, and speaking to them and another trusted friend in Rugby League, I was thinking, well, they've got a good squad. They're going through some changes, but they had Kurt Gidley at fullback, great mate of mine now, but he was a key player and playing New South Wales. Danny Badiris was the Origin captain in the hooker. They had Jared Mullen, who was a young up-and-coming great playmaker there, and then they still had some really good old guys in there like Adam McDougall and Steve Simpson. So they had a great squad as well. And then I definitely wasn't guaranteed anything, like not a starting spot or anything like that, but it was an opportunity, and it ended up then being, a 3-year deal. Mm. So, I made the jump, and it was one of the best things I've ever done. I've lived here now in Newcastle in 2 stints, and it's a second home. But, basically it was an opportunity. It was 3 years, so there was a bit of security. But again, a coach and a club that probably showed a bit of faith in me and believed in me, so I wanted to repay that. Yeah.
And so once you came to the Knights and because at a certain point you became the stand-in captain. Yep. So when the captain was out, like we were talking about before, you would step into that role. So that meant within the team dynamic, you were a leader, no doubt, in the locker room and on training field and all that sort of stuff. Was it that something that you naturally do, or is that something you developed through the process of going up there?
I think I just probably developed that through every year of my football career, even going back to the Narooma Devils years and years ago. But a lot of that comes down to just how you apply yourself at training, how you try and help and support other guys coming through. But I tried to carry that. I know in those earlier days I might have been the captain in some of those junior teams, but in reserve grade at the Saints, I was the skipper there for a year. But we had some great leaders at Newcastle, and in particular Kurt Gidley and Danny Badiris at that time. They were, like I said, they were both playing for Origin, for New South Wales. They were playing for their country, and they set the standards every day at training. So I just tried to bring my own style, stay in my lane, but copy a lot of things they do. And again, if you, as a leader, I find if you're getting yourself right and getting everything in place, so then when you're at training, you're executing that or delivering, but then you've got the time, energy and effort to help other people. Mm-hmm. That's probably my leadership style in a way. Yeah.
Lead by example kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or lead from the front. The idea of you show people what it takes and then you can help them develop the knack to get with what it takes.
Yeah, and I think, to be honest, lead by connecting and encouraging. Like I didn't leave everything in the gym by no means. I was following in the gym.
Yeah.
If we were doing some fitness, I was reasonably fit. But yeah, just with connection, communicating, encouraging other people, being a good communicator in team sport is so undervalued.
Yeah.
Being able to not only just talk inside and out of defence or plays that are coming up, but be able to help somebody through a tough period or lean on them. The communication is key.
Do you think, because you studied teaching, do you think you developed some of those skills in teaching, or did you learn that at home because your mum's a teacher? She would have been a good communicator, no doubt. Is that something that you developed through that process of being at uni that sort of helped carry on to the field?
Definitely, yeah, without a doubt. Yep. It gave me confidence to be able to communicate with others, but then to be able to think about, not everybody learns the same. And that was one of the things through uni. Everyone's got their own different learning styles. And although I was studying at that time earlier to be, a primary educator, in Bachelor of Education in the primary department, a lot of the skills, whether you're teaching adults or kids, they translate across, and that definitely helped.
Yeah, I'd credit some of the finer points of coaching in a strength context to my background in youth work, having studied psychology and group dynamics and stuff like that. That has helped way more than anything I've learned from any fitness course that I've done. Certainly understanding periodization and programming and movement patterns is key, but communication takes you to the next level. So it's something that carries over, that you see in no matter what discipline. People compete at a high level in any sport, that the best coaches and the best leaders are the ones who can communicate with anyone, not just communicate, not the loudest in the room. They're the one that can communicate with you, and then the quiet guy in the corner, and it takes finesse to get to that point.
I remember, as a kid going through high school as well, like, looking up to all teachers, but in particular some male teachers through that time, and the ones that I had a good relationship with and resonated with, without a doubt, just their ability to make a complicated topic, easy, understandable, and that was through their delivery and their teaching style. That's something that I try and do now in the workplace, or if I am with, junior sporting team or whatever it is keep it like that.
Yeah, yeah. So at the Knights, you were there for the better part of a decade, really.
Yeah.
Because you did a year at the Dragons, and the Knights was pretty much the rest of your time in the NRL.
Yeah.
Do you miss the NRL?
Yeah. You know what? When I retired from rugby league overall, I was ready for a rest, for sure. I was pretty burnt out, so to speak. But I definitely miss it. Not that I want to go back and put the boots on straight away, but like there's nothing like it. Or I haven't come across anything like it yet, where you're with 30 of your best mates every day. You're constantly supported, but constantly, fun banter, but testing yourself physically and mentally every single day. And then as well on the weekend against your opponents. Yeah. And, you are on a roller coaster physically, mentally, the whole lot. But it's, there's nothing like it.
Yeah. When you did retire, so I'm kind of skipping forward a little bit, but when you retired fully, was there like a period of mourning or like depression that came after that once you, like, that was gone and you realised, I'm done here?
Yeah.
What was that like, and how did you kind of overcome that?
So I think when I actually retired, it was like a bit of a sense of relief. The last year playing overseas was definitely a tough period. The workplace itself wasn't a really pleasant one to be. Like, I loved my time in England. I loved the club Widnes in the area. But the private owner had pulled his money out of the club. They'd sold our captain to Warrington. They'd sacked our coach, and it was going in a bit of a downward spiral and pretty quick. And then I ended up being in a leadership position over there at that stage in my career. wasn't really what I wanted. I wanted to play hard and contribute, and then obviously do a bit of travelling. And I felt responsible for not just my performance and you know, me and my family, but for, you know, the other guys in the team, and for the younger ones. A lot of their lives depend on being in Super League and playing well over there at that time in terms of, you know, income, career. So, I was putting a lot of pressure on myself, and things were going downhill pretty quick, and a lot of them were out of my control, to be fair. And then the moment that I actually, you know, then announced that I was going to retire, and I only had a 3-year contract over there anyway, so it was inevitable, but it was like a sense of relief, to be honest, a bit of a pressure valve. And then we moved back to Australia, and we spent a few months back down in Narooma, just to find our feet and work out exactly what we wanted to do. But reality sets in pretty quick. I had a fair idea what I wanted to do work-wise, and leaning back into that teaching space, having the degree behind me definitely helped. Yep. But it's a massive change. Yeah. Like, we changed countries, we had young kids, we went from doing the thing that I loved on a good income to literally having no job. So there's a lot of changes and self-doubt, and, you know, are you willing to go back and start again and climb that mountain or a different mountain? Or I think that's where two reasons I think a lot of people struggle, you know, when they move out of professional sport is, you know, they're not willing to go back and climb again, like exactly what got them there in the first place. And the other thing is, you know, because you're used to being on a good wage and people recognise you and you're getting things handed to you, you think you're entitled to that when you finish, and that's just not life. Like, not everyone's getting a job at Channel 9, you know, or a pat on the back. It's righto, swallow the pride, throw the ego in the bin, and go back and build it again.
So that period of time where you were figuring that out, how long was that kind of transition before you were like, or did you just hit the ground running?
From when I retired to then starting work, or from
kind of from when you retired to realising you had to start again and that you were going to positively pursue something else? Yeah.
Look, I was battling with it. Probably the last 6 months I was playing overseas, not really knowing what I wanted to do or how it was going to look. When I came back, I think we landed November 1, 2018, it might have been. And then it wasn't until after Christmas when I then started work. So I gave myself a little bit of time there and holiday and just get back with family and with the young kids, etc. Because we really didn't know even where we were going to live. Yeah. Like, I had a house still up here in Newcastle. I'm from further south. My wife's family's, you know, in and around Wollongong. Yep. So we just thought, let's wait, let's see what we want to do. And then dive into the workspace. So then, started working in the mental health space with a guy I used to play football with down in the Dragons. He had a company in Wollongong, was in the space doing some great stuff, and he gave me an opportunity to start to work with him. And he was doing workplace training already, but my plan was to come in and do training, but more so in schools. Yep. I'd started to develop wellbeing programs to teach in primary schools and use obviously the teaching degree and then things I'd learnt through sport and get in a bit early in that early intervention space and build those foundations, and that's how it started. Yeah.
What originally drew you to the mental health space?
I think without a doubt throughout my playing career I'd been through some challenging times myself, and, you know, without those foundations of, you know, sleep, nutrition, exercise, but above all of that, support, I would have been far worse off and in a pretty dark place. I had very grateful I had some support around me that, you know, kept me afloat there for a few years, and I just valued that. And, you know, I knew that there's a lot of people that may not have that. So how can we help them build those building blocks of resilience, but get into it proactively? Yeah. So when I was in England over there, I knew that was what I wanted to start to do in that area. I didn't know exactly the career path. But while I was in England, I went to college over there, which is like TAFE, and I started studying counselling, just did an introduction into counselling course, and doing that, I was like, I value this. This is the road I want to go down.
Yep.
But I want to, not be a psych, and I'm not a psych or a therapist, but do education around it. That's how I got into it.
Yeah. Once you started doing that, did you feel like that filled the void of sport in a way?
Yeah.
Like now, because sport's a very selfish pursuit, like no matter what sport. Like my sport's exactly the same. It's probably more selfish than any, but it provides a value that it's that chasing something better than bigger than yourself kind of thing, that's testing yourself mentally and physically, and that's what you're striving for, that keeps you going. And when you don't have any of that, you can get into those dark swamps of depression. But when you can, because like I said off air, I've got a youth work background, studied psychology, I've done a lot of stuff in the mental health space before I became a coach. But once I started coaching, I actually found that I used a hell of a lot more of that stuff than I do my coaching. The coaching programming stuff is just kind of the foundation of what I do, and the rest of it's kind of like, hairdresser therapy. In a way. But providing that value to people is the biggest thing that I take out of coaching. When you got into that, you're like, you did the counselling and you see value in this is the path I want to go. But when you actually started working and started helping people, how did that feel?
Yeah, great. It's rewarding, and like it's nothing like sport, but there are some common threads through there, like you're saying, and like even the fact of chasing something and trying to build new relationships or get new clients and things like that. I enjoy that side of it. That drives a little bit of it. But then when you're then delivering sessions, and sometimes if they're smaller, you're definitely teaching. If they're bigger groups, then you're more presenting, and that's like, almost like you're playing, so to speak. You're doing a lot of things in the week to make sure you've got that good performance and you're delivering some key messages. But then the key thing, and anyone who gets in that space knows exactly why, and it's to help other people. And that is really rewarding. If you can help somebody just make the slightest little change, whether it is, seeking help or having a better chat with their partner, or focusing a little bit on themselves because they're doing everything for everyone else, any little change and just seeing them on a better path, that's that satisfaction piece without a doubt. And that's what drives me to keep doing it. That's definitely
what I take most value from in my job as well. Is just that is infinitely valuable and satisfying. It's the giving without expectation kind of thing. It's like you're hoping that someone takes value from it, but when they do and they turn themselves around, it's just very fulfilling. It's just not even like, you can't really articulate it, I don't think. It's just like that is like, that's the purpose of life in a way. Like it's like when you have kids, you've got young kids like I do. Kids are like, you can't articulate what they mean, but they provide so much value to you. You get better at kind of saying what all that stuff means, but it's the same as helping people and giving back and doing all that stuff. It doesn't really need words. It's just infinitely valuable.
You feel it, don't you?
Yeah.
You do.
That's it. So now you're running your own company. In Minds Training, which is based here in Newcastle, but you do stuff around the whole country. What was the impetus to starting that?
Basically, I wanted to be, sounds a bit weird because I've started my own company, but I wanted to be at home more, to be there for my family. Previous workplace, loved it. It was great, but I was doing a lot, and I probably wasn't focusing my time, energy, and effort where it was needed. And the two boys in particular were getting at that age. They're 9 and 7 now, basically, where they're just busy. And my wife, for 15 years, basically, has followed me around for my career. Like we're saying, it's a selfish sport, and even though I'd retired from rugby league, her life was still on hold because my job was pretty demanding. So I knew I still wanted to be in the space, without a doubt. I'm very passionate for it, and it's a priority, but so is family. So I thought if I can be a bit more based around Newcastle, a bit more local, and then not only that, be home a bit more to help and support them. That's the main reason I made the change. The other reason is because I wanted to get more back into schools and with youth. And I've now got the ability to do workplace training, work in schools, or work with community and sporting clubs, and hopefully focus on the hunter. But like you said, working all over.
Yeah. And how long has it been since In Mind started?
Yeah, about 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the last 6 or so months.
Yeah. And how's the growth been, or the beginning of it been?
Yeah, it's been good. I said to somebody only yesterday, without being in the deep end and panicking and frantic and not really keeping my head above water, it's growing nicely, which is great. I've been lucky. I've been doing a few days contracting with some other companies just to let it grow there itself. And one of those is a fantastic organisation called Equi Energy Youth. They're a Newcastle-based non-for-profit charity. They do a lot of work in schools with teachers. So while my stuff's for In Minds training's been growing well, I've also been doing some days supporting and helping them, and they're obviously helping me with that as well.
Yep.
But yeah, I'd love to be in the position next year at some stage to try and grow the team a little bit. But at the same time, I've got to remind myself why I made the changes, and it's to prioritise things at home as well. But I've got 2 loves, but the family's the priority.
Yeah. Well, if you can grow the team, that can take some of the pressure off yourself, so you might be able to delegate more jobs. Tell me a little bit about the training that you do.
Yeah, so it can be anything from a 1-hour workshop to the longest course I deliver is, say, the mental health first aid course. That's a 2-day course. There's other courses in there, a mental health response course. Those 2 in particular are designed for leaders, managers, supervisors, or any workplace peer support program. And they're really thorough. They're in-depth courses that'll teach, how to spot early warning signs of declining mental health, how to have conversations, and what to do if somebody's in a crisis. Other workshops we do might be around just general mental health awareness and trying to break down some stigma in the space and basically encourage people to prioritise self-care and or potentially seek some support. And adults in general, more so males, we don't have great help-seeking behaviours, and we know, crisis and suicide rates are as high as they've probably ever been, and a big part of that is education and awareness, but the access to this training and resources that, workplaces and schools and community are now focusing on, thankfully.
Yeah. What are some of the biggest things that you see resonate most with the groups that you talk to?
Again, I suppose the delivery of the session is important because in this space, and I'd like to think everyone else does, but what I definitely do is you need to follow research-backed and evidence-based content. So a lot of the material mightn't change a great deal, but how you connect with the workforce and deliver that is important. And I just try and use everyday language and be relatable to the workforce. And mining might be a good example, although I haven't worked every day in an underground mine or open cut mine. I've been in a workforce where you rely on each other, you've got a job to do, but you're working as a team.
Yep.
So that's really important. And then, with the young ones in particular and working with teachers, they're just under pressure, stress, time, poor, everything. And we're trying to give teachers skills to support young people in psychological distress.
Yeah.
That's going to help them in the moment. It's going to help long term, and it's going to save a bit of time and energy for the school as well.
Yeah. Obviously, when you're a similar age to me, you're a bit younger than I am.
I don't look it.
I'm youthful. Everyone's surprised when I say how old I am, but I feel like one day I'm just going to look like I'm an 80-year-old. I've got the ninja aging qualities. I get to 80 and I still look 30, and then at 80 I look 140. When we were kids, this is not even in the realm of discussion. Certainly even in the last 20 years it hasn't really been that prevalent. I remember I have a background in music.
Yep.
So for a long time my priority in life was my band, and I worked in jobs where I could just be not relied upon really, and I was just getting money so I could go on tour and do that. That was my priority, similar to playing, in a sports team. But with a hell of a lot less money because we didn't make anything. But in those workplaces, like I remember being in an office environment where my mental health had declined significantly and I was having anxiety attacks at work that I couldn't really put my finger on. And when I realised what they were, I went up to my managers and I'm like, I'm actually having an anxiety attack. I need to go home. And I remember getting called into a meeting with the manager and the supervisor where the supervisor said to me something like, you don't have to make up bullshit excuses to go home and, play on your mental health. And I just remember being absolutely shocked, like to my back teeth, because it's something I'd spent a lot of time in around the mental health space, and with the youth work background, I knew how important these environments where your leaders could be empathetic and compassionate about how you're feeling mentally. And in a workplace where mental health was terrible and there was multiple people killing themselves regularly because the workplace was deplorable, to be treated like that, it's just, this is only 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So the fact that you're getting in now and getting onto that, it's great work. It's amazing that it's taken so long, considering how long we've been talking about some of these mental health things, and it is severely lacking. So
it is.
I think what you're doing is great work.
Nah, thanks, Rob. And look, sorry to even hear about that experience, because it takes so much, awareness, knowledge, but courage to speak about what's actually going on, and then to let a leader in the workplace know that. And you'd like to think you're going to be supported, and then to get that's tough.
Oh yeah.
That's those things that then stop us telling somebody else about it or seeking support for it, because if we haven't had trusted people in our life that we can turn to for support, well, when we need it, why would we do it? And no, definitely not, coming from their side, but a lot of leaders just have no idea. Like, if mental health isn't something that was in your family or in your close circles, etc., they've just got no understanding about it, unless they're doing some sort of training or, etc. I know I've worked with leaders before and done courses where they say, I'm glad I'm learning this because I can see when my staff's struggling a bit, but they don't come to me for support. But at least now I've got an understanding and I might be able to refer them or link them to somebody else. Yeah. But the value of a supportive workplace is so important. And just quickly, I'll just share a story. Wayne Bennett came here to Newcastle for a few years, and I was lucky enough to play under him for a period of time. And look, Wayne left Newcastle and circumstances have changed a little bit. And, it probably wasn't the best ending to his contract, so to speak. But the first few years when he was here, it was great. And without calling it necessarily mental health, he had a massive focus on it, so much so that he would get a psychologist that come in at the start of the year, put everyone, through a bit of a personality profile, and then Wayne knew how to help, support, treat you, look after you, etc. on the back of that. And Wayne would do sessions with him. We would do sessions with him as a playing group, and we knew if we had some, things going on in our life, we could turn to him, and he wouldn't throw it back in our face. He'd listen to us, he'd help us, or he'd link us with Phil or another psych if need be, because he was empathetic, he was understanding, because he'd had some of his own stuff going on in his life. But he also knew that if he could keep you or get you at your best, well, then you'd perform well on the field, and it doesn't matter what job or industry you're in. That's it. People in the workplace are so, we need to do something mental health in case there's a crisis. Well, yeah, you do, but you also should be focusing on it proactively, because you're going to get positive outcomes for the workplace anyway.
Yeah, that's it. And granted, this work, I'm not even going to give them credit for it, but this workplace did try to very poorly bring up the camaraderie of the group. They'd have, parties where there's open bars, which are not good for mental health. They'd hang up decorations and happy signs and stuff like that, which is just insulting to anyone that's actually struggling. But then when you go to the leadership and, I kind of the person I actually went to and said that, this is going on, I need to go home, was very compassionate about it. But when I was called into the meeting with the other higher up and to be insulted like that, I just knew that I wasn't long for that job, basically. And certainly not a traumatic experience for me. It's just insulting, really, to be like, okay, well, if that's how little you value people, that's on you. Hopefully one day you wake up.
Imagine how many good staff he's lost until then and probably since.
Yeah. And like so much stuff went on in that workplace. It was an awful environment that just never got any better. And it's, for lack of a better word, toxic.
Yeah.
But so much could have been done from the management just by learning about what some of these signs are and how to deal with it, how to refer it on, how to, making a change in the workplace that's actually beneficial to the mental health, not just insulting.
Not just a fruit bowl,
Yeah.
are you okay day, and say we're looking after our people. It needs to be a bit more in depth.
Yeah, and Are You Okay Day, I have strong feelings about Are You Okay Day. Like, I think it's great because it's mental health advocacy, and I'm certainly not going to talk poorly about it, but it feels like that attempt, like it's a smiley face sticker on a open wound. It's not enough. It gets it started, but it's not enough.
Yeah.
And we're lucky we have so many good agencies and not-for-profits and organisations like yours that are out there, educating about the reality of it. That's a bit less tacky than something like, smile, you'll be okay.
Yeah.
Or just check in on your mates. It's like, you can check in on people multiple times and they still commit suicide.
Yeah.
So, checking in's not enough.
Yeah.
So.
No, I agree. And it started with that general awareness. You're right. But, what if somebody says they're not okay?
Yeah.
Or, what about all the other days of the year? And I know, they try and expand on that, but you're right. It needs to be, more in-depth training. We need to be better aware, more educated, for sure.
And it seems like the more that there is education and awareness of this to reduce the stigma, that actually there's more prevalence of mental health issues. And I don't think that that's the catalyst for it by any means. I think it's largely our society that is the catalyst for it, that we're deeply unhappy as people. And I think a lot of it comes from not having that mountaintop to chase. People don't have that in their life, so they need to find that. And certainly it was for me. So it's like for a long time I was fine because I did music until I stopped music, and I was like, what do I do now? And didn't know that I was really depressed and lost without it, because I had a new baby and it was right when my first son was born.
Yeah.
And I was just really angry. And my wife was like, why are you angry all the time? Like, we're living where we want to live, you got a beautiful new son, family, we're doing what we want to do. And it's like, I don't have a mountaintop to chase. That's what I don't have. And it took a long time to realise that. It really took probably 2 years in the gym to go, oh, right, that's what it is.
Good stuff, like having a goal, having something to work towards, and it doesn't really matter what it is.
No.
But
that's
key,
it.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, do you want to be better at your job? Do you want to start a hobby and get really good at it? Do you want to, whatever, just pick something that you want to chase that's bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
And that will help immensely. It's not going to be the be-all and end-all for everyone, but how are you seeing your courses and your presentations and stuff being received in terms of actionable change once you leave a workplace? Like, have you gotten feedback to say that we've implemented this stuff and it's worked really well? Or are you kind of too new to the scene to like be that far down the road? Like, what's that look like at the moment?
No, without a doubt, it's it is pleasing. The way you might circle back or find out some of that information, I suppose, is just touching base with the client afterwards, and they might be still talking about some key messages that you've implemented there, or just even Newcastle being a small place, you run into people that might be from that workplace and they might say, oh, since your talk, I've been trying to focus a bit more on my sleep and it's been helping. Or if we go back to the same client and do a double up session there, we'll get the workers then more likely to come and have a chat to me after a session, and they might say, for example, your session hit home a bit, and since then I've went and had a chat to the GP, and I'm getting a bit of support. So you've got, the stories, anecdotal sort of stuff, but when you follow back up with, say, a refresher course, or again back in that work environment, that's when you can probably gauge how effective the sessions are in a way, but like you said, how much positive change that's making in the workplace. And that's not to say, everyone leaves there and wants to, dramatically change their life by any means, but increasing just some strategies in the toolkit, but in particular those help-seeking behaviours is key. And probably you actually would never know the impact that has, because that's still a pretty private thing.
Yeah.
Like not everyone who goes and rings a helpline or a GP is going to let you know about it because of that, everything that comes with it. But yeah.
That's it. A lot of people like to talk about it almost as if that's the help in itself, is just talking about trying to get help, or talking about their feelings is just like expressing it is helpful. Yeah. But it doesn't make it, like, from experience with other people, and in a work environment and personal environment, talking about it's not enough. You have to do like actionable change and change behaviours, and I'm a big proponent of cognitive behavioural therapy, having gone through it myself and learnt about it and done all this stuff. Habit changing is a massive one, I think. Yeah. But planting seeds, like if you're in a workplace and you're planting that seed of, help-seeking behaviour, like you said, or just that it's this minor things you can do that you don't have to tell anyone about, that you can just go to sleep a little bit earlier or at the right times of day, and like limit certain behaviours that can have positive benefits down the road that people do, and they're the like breadcrumbs towards recovery from mental health issues, I think.
And it's a journey, isn't it? And it's patience through that, a few steps forward, a few steps back. But just on that, and I might ask you, Rob, if you can, some things that you try and prioritise. But one of the psychologists that I used to do a bit of work with, Phil Johnsey, his famous line he used to say, I've got 3 degrees in psych, but I can't control my thoughts. He said, what I can control is my actions, and if I do different things, I think different things. So like you're saying, yes, therapy's great, we need to talk, we need to do this, but we also need to change our actions to sometimes get different outcomes. And I know myself now, like I'm not playing any professional sport whatsoever, but I try and, focus a little bit on the nutrition when I can, and try and sleep, because they're my building blocks. But in terms of actions for you, like what do you prioritise just for general well-being?
I think, because a big part of my issues would be around anxiety and stress.
Yep.
I'm a stress head.
Yep.
Like, you saw me when you got here, I was like, I leave everything to... I'm like, I was on time, but I was on time enough that if anything goes wrong on the journey, like it rains and everyone drives 50, I'm going to be just on time. So I was stressed out. That's kind of my chronic repeatable behavioural patterns that cause me a lot of stress. So doing things like, and my wife helps immensely with this, it's just like, start getting ready 20 minutes earlier. Leave yourself enough time. And I don't do it all the time. I'm not going to say that I'm perfect at it.
Yep.
More often than not, I fail at it. But a really big thing to help decrease stress with me, and anyone of my friends listening to this that know about this will laugh, but whiteboards are an immense help. I've got 4, I think, 3. So I plan out my week, I plan out the month, I plan out the podcast, I plan out work. Like, there's one for everything. Yeah. Having the ability to write stuff down that I know it's coming, and I can sit at the table and I can see them, and like whether that's just the kids have got this on, or I've got to go and do this, or my wife's got to go and do this, or the car's in, just because I can't remember it. Yep. I don't have enough space anymore for that stuff. Who does? Yeah. Yep. So that's a big actionable de-stressor for me, is if and I used to hate planning. So it was like, I hate routine. I don't want to plan anything. I don't want to know about it. Just tell me when it's happening. And then I'll get angry. Like, I didn't know that was happening, and I'd be really stressed out. But the more time I have to prepare, the better I'm going to handle it.
Yeah.
And it's, by and large, one of the biggest changes in my life is whiteboards.
Yeah, I love it though.
Yeah.
I love it. So if you think about from the moment we wake up in the morning, we're reacting pretty quickly, aren't we? Like whether it's to an alarm or, something's happening at home and we're looking on our phone, we're reacting to that, etc. Then we're on the news and we're rushing late to work. And like sometimes we get into bed at night and we go, like, what a day. Because we're constantly just in that stress response, and let alone if we're managing anxiety and we're busy with business, that's just day-to-day life, without children pressures or finance, etc. But, if we're not putting those little things in place or trying to get organised or trying to get up a little bit earlier, we're just on that hamster wheel until we sort of fall off it. So those simple strategies, although they're hard, they're so effective. Exactly like your story, I was chatting to a mate in the last few months, and he was accessing a bit of support, and he was stressed, he was anxious, and I said to him, have you got a diary? And he goes, no. I said, mate, you're running 2 businesses, you've got a busy family. I said, where are you keeping all that? And it's in here, but with cognitive overload's probably a term you've heard and people thrash around these days. We're just consuming so much information. Unless we're getting planned and organised a bit, it's hard.
Yeah, I started with the diaries,
but
I wouldn't look at it.
Yeah.
So this is my notebook, which is only for this purpose because it's open. But I started, the original thing that I started was like, all right, I need a diary. And then I would just write it in there and shut it, and I'll look at it. And I wouldn't know anything was happening because I wasn't regularly checking it. So then we went to whiteboard in a visible spot that's in the house. So the first one was when we lived back down the coast, and I could see it from the lounge room and the kitchen, and I'd see it when I walked out of the bedroom in the morning. And it's just like that. Okay, cool. I know what's happening. And it was, it's a massive thing that I resisted. And I find that that's a very common theme, is the thing that you resist the most is probably going to be the most beneficial. So planning, routine. Sleep's a big one for me. I'm a chronic late night person. And that started when I was in my teen years. I'd stay up till 5, 6 o'clock in the morning when I dropped out of high school.
And probably music as well.
Late nights and, partying and all that stuff. But I'll still now, if I don't have to get up for something, I'll stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning. But it's bad news if I do it because I'm grumpy the next day. So like even last night we had a really busy day and I just needed to unwind. So I stayed up probably later than I should have, and I woke up this morning, I'm like, oh, that was a bad move. That's kind of a good one because you got instant regret. As soon as you open your eyes in the morning, you're like, oh, God. But that's like trying to get on top of that. That's a big management one for me, and eating enough food. Like I'm a big guy. I outlay a lot of energy too in the gym, and I will not eat enough. I'll eat in the morning, go to the gym all day and work and train, and I'll get home and I'll be like a zombie because I haven't fueled during the day, even though I tell my clients to do this and I know the benefits of it. So if I can, and that comes down to planning too, having enough food in the cupboard that I can take food to work and stuff like that. So I think that's my biggest one is just the planning. But then just having it somewhere where it's automatic. So that's where it's whiteboards for me.
And with the food stuff, convenience, isn't it, as well? Like I just try and go by the 80-20. 80% make good choices, then 20% if you're not near a healthier option or whatever, you can grab it and try not to beat yourself up. But convenience is key.
But like the end of the day, more fuel generally is going to be better, especially as an athlete. You can burn more sugars. So, if you're going to train for 3 or 4 hours, have it like I've got electrolytes in there. Electrolytes with sugar. There's lots of electrolyte drinks now that they don't have sugar. They've just got heaps of salt, which is great. But arguably your muscles need the sugar to process the electrolytes to replenish the glycogen, so you've got the energy to burn. So I try and have sugar.
Yep.
Even though I've got fat to burn, I start to shut down if I'm not, drinking, 3 or 4 litres of water and electrolytes and having snacks and stuff like that while I'm training.
Yep.
They're, from an athletic perspective, particularly in strength sports, but I would, imagine the same in rugby when you were playing, your energy expenditure is huge.
Through the roof.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd lose, be nothing to lose 5 kilos in a game, and obviously fluid, but, and then trying to top that up was key. Even sometimes it got pretty strict there at the back end of my career where they'd try and get you to try and put that on before you leave the change rooms.
Yeah, right.
Weighing in after it, water, protein drinks, etc. But, straight after that exercise, your body doesn't want to digest that sort of stuff.
No.
But, you got to keep the fuel in.
Yeah, yeah. So what's the future look like for In Mines, and what's the, I don't know if there needs to be an end goal apart from just continuing to help, but what's the mountaintop look like?
Yeah, to be honest, I haven't really looked that far into it. I probably need to do some planning. I reckon the start of next year, I just want to manage through the end of this year, and then over Christmas I'll sit down and do some planning, and whether I do sort of 3 years or 5 years, I'm not sure yet. I would like to grow it a little bit more, without a doubt. Focus still across the different areas. I don't want to just pigeonhole myself and just do the workplace or just do schools.
Yep.
Sporting clubs and communities really important as well. I would love the opportunity and to get in a position where I can drop myself into a community for a period of time. Say, for example, if I was to go up the coast to Port Macquarie, and I could work up there and do some stuff in schools, work with sporting clubs and with businesses, and try and get an area on the same page, using common language, promoting support options, etc. And then hopefully myself and others can keep driving it in those locations. Yeah. So as much as I love Newcastle, I am passionate about other country areas, and I know that they don't have access to the resources and crisis, suicide rates, etc. Those rural communities are high. My wife, she grew up out in Griffith in that area out there, and I'd love to get out there, drop in there for a period of time and help support and educate communities, and then come back in.
Yep.
But that's as probably far as I've really thought. I need to keep developing myself in business, but also in education. I might start to bring a few extra programs into my offerings, but at the moment I'm just managing okay the way it is, and get through till the end of the year. And I've really enjoyed the challenge. It's the first time I've stepped into being a business owner. I've always just worked in sport or for somebody else, so there's a lot that comes with it, whether it's the marketing side or the finance and accounting side, etc. So I'm taking it all in. I think I'm managing pretty well, but there'll be a time where I'll probably need a bit of help with that stuff as well.
I think that's a good one as a business owner myself, which sounds weird to say, but as a self-employed person, getting help when it's outside your scope is like, you might balk at the fact that you have to pay an accountant. Yep. But that accountant's going to do an infinitely better job than you're going to do, and you're going to save yourself so much stress. Yeah. Like, I tried to do my own stuff for ages, and then I'm going to credit my wife here because she's the voice of reason in our household. She'd be like, just hire an accountant. Yep. And then one just sort of came up suggested on Instagram that was local. So I was like, I'll give him a go. And he's a young fella. I liked his logo and the vibe of it. So I was like, okay. And he's great. Yeah. It's just, then he reached out the next year and he was like, you want me to do it again this year? I'm like, yes, thank you. But things like that are just simple, and you think, oh, I'm saving money if I do it myself, but it's not about the money. It's about the stress. Yeah. So you're going to,
like you said before, just even like your bandwidth, how much can you take in? You can't be in deep on everything as the business grows, but that's a really good tip. Getting the right people in is something I'll look to do.
Especially when you're trying to do something there's a skill, whether, it's like your dad who's a self-employed plumber.
Yep.
He wants to be a great plumber.
Yep.
And run a great business. But you can't necessarily do both to the full extent. Like, I want to be a great coach, and like I'm okay at advertising and marketing and like management and accounting and all these other things. I'm not. Yeah. That's not my forte, but I can't be all of them. So I have to pick one area to go in, one that I'm okay at, that I don't need help at, and the other ones I go, okay, I need help.
Yeah.
I think it's beneficial in the long run for the growth of the business, but also just your own sanity. Do you find when you go into workplaces and community, having the background as a relatively recognisable celebrity around, particularly in Newcastle, I'm sure everyone goes, oh, how's it?
Yeah.
How's it going?
Well,
does it help you when you go into a workplace or a work, like out in the mines, for example? I imagine that's a big wall of shutdown when people are talking about mental health out there.
Yeah.
Does it help break the ice?
Yes, it does. It's funny when I go into a workplace, so some people look at you and they think, oh, I know that face, but I don't know where from.
Yeah.
Half the group probably thinks I'm from the Wiggles. Okay, I get that one a bit, which is a good laugh, and even that in itself is an icebreaker.
Yeah.
But then in terms of the football background, a lot of the education and all of it that I deliver isn't based around sport whatsoever. It's about mental health and well-being. But it's the conversations around the teaching that really helps. Because, even if somebody doesn't follow the Knights or football, they generally know what it is, especially in New South Wales. And it's a good way just to kick off those conversations. Like, what footy team do you follow? Oh, how are you going? And then just away you go with a chat. That's the icebreaker, and then you're diving into the mental health side of it.
Yeah.
But without a doubt, it helps. But in saying that, there's a lot of great people in this space, and I've been lucky to work with plenty of others as well that don't have a sporting background. They have a background in the mines, or they're a wharfie, or they're a boxer, or they're, female presenters. Like, there's a lot of workplaces that are crying out for female presenters in this space as well. But anything you can do to relate to your audience is key, and I'm just grateful, I suppose, footy helps me a little bit with that connection.
Yeah. Well, it's probably a broader commonality that most people are probably going to, like you said, they know at least what football is. Yeah. They probably will follow it. They probably know who the Knights are if they're around this area. They're probably a Knights fan, maybe. Yeah. Unless you're me, because I'm Victorian and I don't even know who to follow. But because I'm in the Hunter, I'm a Knights fan.
You've got to be.
Yeah. But that's kind of what I'm getting at with that question is like those commonalities are the things that break the ice, the ability to relate, but not in a way that's like, oh, when I did this and I was this person, where you put yourself up here. No. It's like, well, even I dealt with that through this process, or, when we did this, it's, something that they can see that's tangible, that they can relate to, but wouldn't think necessarily that mental health issues come along with it. Or challenges around certain things come along with it. That's when I find from my own personal experience that breaks down the walls a little bit. They're like, oh, even, that exists even in that world. Yep. It's like, because everyone sees the internet version of everyone these days that looks great. It's like, it's not all roses and rainbows. Yeah. So when you work with workplaces versus if you went into a sporting club, what's some of the stuff you'd talk about in a sporting club that would be different? Like, how would you approach talking about mindset and mental health and stuff with a sports team versus a workplace?
Yeah. So I suppose in terms of a journey with a client, first of all, is just to find out if they've done anything in the space or not. These, in today's day and age, they may have done things before, or they may have people in there that have trained, or they've done different workshops. So you got to probably see their mental health literacy level, where they're at to start with. But for, say, a sporting club, if I was to work with one of them, you want some people within the club with the support skills, as in to be able to identify declining mental health, how to have conversations, and how to link with further supports if needed.
Yep.
For the playing group, then again, it'd be really important, especially a male one, but also female, to break down that stigma in there and let people know that, throughout your footballing career or sporting career, you're going to have day-to-day challenges like every one of us, but you're also going to have some additional specific ones relevant to your workplace, to your sporting club, and that's going to be injuries, team selection, form in particular, and then how to use a combination of your mindset, your coping strategies, and the support to help you through those times.
Yeah. What would you say are some of the biggest things you took from your career as a high-level professional athlete that you can tell those sporting clubs that would be beneficial?
I think, throughout probably some times in my career, especially earlier in life, I reckon I just had a limited toolkit when it came to coping strategies. Like basically, as a young person, I only had 3 coping strategies. Now I look back on it, and one of those was surfing. I still do that now. I love it. The other one was exercise. That served me really well. And the other one was drinking. And that's probably the root cause of every bad decision I've made in my life. I still enjoy a beer now. I just do it at better times and for different reasons. So, having different coping strategies is something that I'd try and build with a young playing group, etc. So when they are riding that wave or they're down in a form slump or feeling stressed, anxious, depressed, they've just got a range of self-care options they can turn to. Just building that and trying to increase those, again, the help-seeking behaviours.
I think for the alcohol one's an interesting one because it's very dominant in culture generally, but in any footy club, no matter what discipline, there's a big culture of drinking because there's celebratory beers after a game and there's going out on the weekends and stuff like that. That becomes part of the culture. Certainly I've seen it with the AFL and Aussie rules in general, having being my experience growing up. Quitting drinking was like my biggest positive change that I've made in the last decade and something I wish I did a hell of a lot earlier. But because I can't have a casual beer every now and then. Like I could, but I didn't enjoy it. What I enjoyed doing was going out and partying, and I was like, this is destructive behaviour. And to stop that, I think getting into sporting clubs and just like young groups of men particularly, I think, and quelling that desire to drink away your feelings, or that's the bonding moment where you share positivity is I think a good thing to kind of start crumbling away as a cultural positivity. Because it's net negative, I think.
Yeah, without a doubt. And look, when I started in the early 2000s, it was probably even more prevalent earlier than that. But like if you weren't going out 3 nights a week, you nearly weren't in the team.
Right.
Like it was a big part of it. And then towards the back end of my career, we would go weeks without really having a beer, depending on, your gap between games. But it's still, it's still a massive issue in Australia and with young people for sure. But you're right, in terms of, the reward side of it. Like when I look back, one of the things I miss most is, just sitting in the change rooms after a win or a loss, but knowing that you've given it your all with your teammates, and it might be sitting there not having a beer, or it might be having 1 or 2. It's not the 3-day bender, you know what I mean? It's just that in the moment with your friends and, doing things more contained and responsible in a way. But everyone was 20 at some stage and everyone's made different decisions, but you're right, if we can try and help them through those challenges, that's a big part of it.
I think even like if alcohol's not the pinnacle of that camaraderie, it would be better. It's like this, it isn't it's a condiment to that team environment, not a precursor to it being a team environment. It's like sitting around and drinking's not the primary goal. It's the bonding and the brotherhood of a team and the sisterhood of a team.
Yep.
That's the primary goal, and that if there is drinking involved, it should just pepper that, you know, so it's a little bit sweeter or a little bit tastier, not being, you know, the destructive, out of control behaviour that it ends up being, I think.
A race or a competition, isn't it?
Yeah. It's just like you just said, you know, the root cause of most of the bad decisions in your life because of alcohol. Mine were the same. I just did dumb things.
Yep.
Come from drinking alcohol. That's why I stopped. It's like I have no bones with anyone who drinks.
Yep.
But for me, that was the most positive change I have probably ever made.
Yep.
And one I have helped many people stop doing now that's provided great value to my life is helping people stop drinking when they've recognised that it's just destructive behaviour.
Yeah, good stuff. And look, I think as well, like talking about breaking down the stigma with mental health, etc., but like I think it is more acceptable or people are more understanding now if you say you're not having a drink.
Mm-hmm.
Like even, you know, the 0% beers and things like that, I think the sales are increasing there. But that's the other thing because, you know, being in those environments, peer pressure, you know, but like if you actually knew that your mate has stopped drinking because when he does, his anxiety goes through the roof, or as soon as he's not around someone, he starts having some dark thoughts, then you'd be like, oh, I understand why he's not drinking, but we don't communicate that, do we? Oh, you're soft or whatever. Yeah. So it's the substance, whatever it may be, but it's what's driving it that we need to help that person work through a little bit, if we can, and that's through education.
Yeah. Well, to wrap it up, what's the best way to find In Minds training? How do people contact you if they're interested in getting you to come out to the workplace or the community group or any of the groups that you work with, schools and whatnot? How do we find you and what sort of, I think we've covered what you offer, but you know, what's the best place to find you?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Rob. So I've got a website. It's just www.in-minds.co, right, just CO. My email address, again, is just Chris, CHRIS, at in-minds.co. Maybe we can put a link on the bottom of the podcast or something when you put it out.
Yep.
But yeah, there's enough basic, easy to navigate information on the website there. But if you are interested, shoot me an email. We can organise a call or a catch up just to find out, I think, what program or what training is best suited to your workplace. That's key.
Yep. Really
important that I'm not just laying out everything I deliver, but what's going to give you the most bang for buck is key.
Yeah, it's a good way to approach it, I think, because it's not one fix for everything.
Exactly.
It's like you've got a toolbox for a reason because you need. It's like, what's the job? I need this tool.
Exactly.
So that's a good way to look at it. Yeah. So all the links to your Instagram and your website and stuff, I'll put all that in the description of both platforms. So that'll be easily accessible for people if they do. But yeah, I encourage that if any group or school or workplace is looking for that type of thing, reach out to Chris. It seems to be a very good service. I like it. I'm a big fan. I think it's incredibly valuable work that you do, and especially having come up through doing it myself and being a participant and someone who's worked with youth in mental health spaces. I think it's incredibly valuable and important for more people to be doing it, particularly people who have the background that you do, because I think people look up to sports people a lot. And if you can turn around and provide something of value to help younger people, I think that's incredible. So good on you for that.
No, I really appreciate you having me on. And, I've listened to a few of the podcasts here with other guests you've had on, and, encouraging people how to make a little change in their life is something that I value, I'm passionate about, and I really hope I've shared some information that can help along that journey. But like I said, I can even share some resources with you, or if somebody did, need a link to some supports, I'm always happy to help with that as well. But yeah, thanks heaps.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on. It's awesome to finally meet you.
Yep.
And thank you very much.
Cheers.
All right. Thanks for watching, everyone.
Thanks, Rob.
And we'll be back again soon.